Welcome back to Emotional Algebra with Dr. E. The last episode went a little bit long, so what we decided to do was break it into 2 episodes. So what we're going to do now is pick up right where we left off with Dr. E explaining conscious and unconscious behavior, defense mechanisms. So let's get right back into it. It's interesting stuff. Here he is, Dr. E.
What happens when we have a life experience? Well, we have this life event. This life event is registered by our conscious mind and our unconscious. We cannot draw a line to say, I am not going to unconsciously register whatever happens in my life. No, I think every experience we have is registered by our conscious and our unconscious. And it's going to hit our unconscious filtered. And yet what's going to happen after that? So after that happens, it starts to resonate. Now what I want to do at this point is kind of stop and step back and talk about the way that I look at emotions. That to me, each emotion is like a different frequency. When I was doing the daily doses of sunshine for AccuWeather, which you remember well and working with you on that, I did one daily dose that had me playing a keyboard. And I was hitting all the different keys in the keyboard and basically said each emotion is like a different note. And we can play those notes together in a way that sounds harmonic. Or we can play those notes in a way that sounds, dissonant and not harmonic. And we can hit a whole bunch of notes that feels overwhelming. So if each emotion is a different frequency, to me, what I feel happens is in these life events, they resonate. Those life events resonate with different emotions, meaning that they have that similar frequency that's going to increase what we call the amplitude or the volume, the size of that wavelength of that emotional frequency. And then it's going to resonate with other emotions, which are resonating with other times and other events and other experiences, and then resonate with other beliefs. So what we see here is, as I'm talking about events, listener, is I have this life event with arrows that go to our conscious mind through our defenses. So the defenses are surrounding that conscious mind that's logic-based. And also that arrow goes to the unconscious. And then once that arrow gets to the unconscious, then I have other arrows that are connecting all these red circles, which is the idea of a common emotional resonance throughout time. Okay. Now, as you're doing this, then our defenses are trying to fend off that internal experience because conscious mind says, no, I don't want to react this way. Or maybe the conscious mind says, yeah, I do want to react this way. So the conscious mind opens up the defenses, says, come on down. And then that behavior acts out. That person justifies their behavior because now they're a justified persecutor, potentially feeling victimized. Again, going back to a couple episodes on the roles we play. Or they might not feel they want to do that. They're supposed to be the rescuer. So they bury that feeling of anger and they try to understand. But the issue that happens here is the more that we have these experiences singularly and the power of that experience or the collection of those experiences over time, the more likely that they are to break through the defenses, take over the conscious mind, act out. And then after it's done and they fade back into the unconscious, the person's like, whoa, what just happened here? Why did I do that? What is wrong with me? And then they feel their own defenses and their own conscious mind says, God, I hate that I do that, or I hate myself. And then what have we done? We've created adversarial energy within ourselves. This is why I say we categorize every emotion, every experience, every attitude, every belief as good and or bad, right and or wrong, strong and or weak. And does it help me to win or lose?
A lot going on there, Dr. E. Looking at the, I'm going to give you my question now. Looking at the graphic and what you're discussing, I noticed that the layout of this, especially for anyone listening, is about 5% or maybe 10% of it is devoted to the conscious, logic-based, and the rest of the graphic is unconscious. So it feels almost like to me that the conscious is this little thing that's like almost under attack from the unconscious all the time and trying to, like you said, behave in a certain way, but maybe it can't always because it's just going to be overwhelmed. Is that what's going on sometimes?
Well, it's all how we use that energy. It really becomes down to how we understand our past, our present, our perceptions of future, and what we do with that energy. That's often why when people come to me, yes, they feel overwhelmed. So what's the purpose of overwhelm? Remember, we're talking about emotional specificity again. The idea of overwhelmed is that emotion says you got a lot going on. There's too much to sort through. So, that's where then what overwhelm typically does in our world is we kind of everything's piled on top of it, and everything's screaming at once for attention. I want to be heard. I want to be fixed. Let me out. You're doing this. This is happening to me. And those are that's the noise that often people literally talk about. It's so noising my head. That noise in your head doesn't mean you're crazy. We often go through that. So in that, what we want to understand is what overwhelm either wants to do is huddle up, learn helplessness, or it wants to run. And what its true purpose to me is to say, okay, back up, give me some space, and let's look at each of you individually. Let's look at the belief systems that are being triggered. Let's look at the things we need to solve in the outside world. Let's look at the emotions singularly that are coming up. Fear, shame, guilt, betrayal. Now let's look at the history. So again, what is overwhelm doing? Overwhelm to me is the algebra teacher. And overwhelm is an emotion saying, let's sort all these things out and look at all the variables we have and then understand the connection between these variables. Don't see overwhelm as the enemy. See it as your friend. The same thing as stupid. Stupid tells us that we've experienced multiple failures. So I say stupid is F times X. Failure times X. Again, the relationship we have with overwhelm and stupid in our unconscious and all those circles is those are things to be avoided. Those are things we don't understand. Therefore, what happens? More and more energy in our emotional bank account is being built up, and we start to get in the red. All the experiences that we feel are good and strong and right are outnumbered by the experiences that feel bad and wrong and weak. And then, yes, our conscious mind eventually feels overwhelmed and overloaded, and we don't have any more defenses because we're deficit spending. So the defenses can't pull on defending all of that stuff, so they have to rob Peter to pay Paul. Well, we'll defend against anger right now. We'll defend against sadness right now. We'll defend against the shame and guilt right now, but we don't have enough to go around and defend against the anger, with the shame, with the guilt, with the sadness, with the unloved, with the abandoned. And then that's where, to me, we really want to look at why do we have so many issues that people are being put on medications right now? What does that have to do with it? Now, this to me a lot is because we really haven't learned how to address emotions. The most important education we can get, to me, when we are kids growing up, is an emotional education, because kids can't learn academically if their emotional house isn't in order. And that's many times the meetings I'm having with schools and teachers and parents when kids are struggling, is we got to take care of their emotional house before we even focus on their educational house. Same goes for adults.
Yeah. So it sounds like you said something a little counterintuitive there, that being overwhelmed is not necessarily not the enemy. It's actually your friend. Look at it that way. Yeah. So how can people do that? I think people are probably going to look at it as being overwhelmed as a negative. How can they look at it differently?
Well, I think, again, just in how you said that, is I talking about feelings with the verb to feel, and you talked about a feeling or emotion with the verb to be. If I am overwhelmed, semantically, all of me has become overwhelmed. If I look at overwhelmed as a singular emotion that also has other emotions and experiences that come with it, and I remind myself, wait, this emotion has a purpose. It's trying to tell me something and then show me something. Remember the reasons for emotions: to tell us things, show us things, teach us things, do things for us, help us do things for ourselves. So again, if we go back and that we start asking questions, then we can see, oh, this emotion is here to do this. This emotion is here to do this. And what am I getting to? The logic of emotion. That emotions make sense when we start to seek to understand, versus when we just judge them through the lens of this hierarchical world that frankly just contributes to more conflict. It doesn't contribute to peace and resolution, understanding, and even self-love. It undermines that, because it's about power over versus power with.
So what types of questions should people be asking themselves?
Great question. So after we get through the affect bridges here, which is the emotional connections, questions I want to ask people are, what age do I feel? So often I'm asking people when they have an experience, they'll say, what age do you feel? Their first comment is, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. And I'll say, well, think about it. First, you're feeling this whole combination of emotions and belief systems. Now, I just want you to stop a moment, feel inside and feel if a memory comes up, if a place comes up in the mind, if a person comes up, and just feel if you can associate that with that age. So then often, I'll give you examples. Somebody might go back to 13 years old. And then we'll talk about what would happen at 13, what was going on. And then we'll find that emotional anchor or that belief system anchor. And then I'll say, now you're 13 and this is happening. What age do you feel then? And they're like, oh, I feel 8. And then we'll go, okay, now you're feeling 8. And what age do you feel then? So what we're doing is we're finding those affect bridges that connect them back through time to help them to see this is a complex emotional event. This reaction and behavior you're having in the present has very little to do about the present. The present becomes the trigger. Remember that emotional resonance I talk about, those common frequencies that then increase resonance, not just with that singular emotion, but with also other emotions that from a frequency standpoint resonate with the harmonics or the different notes that comprise the overtones and undertones of that frequency. Yes, I'm getting into physics, but from that standpoint, people are interested in that, can go, oh, I see how this makes sense. For your everyday viewer, there are emotions that are connected. I call guilt and shame the brothers. Why? Because guilt lets us know when we've done something to somebody else we need to fix. Shame lets us know when we've done something to ourselves we need to fix. Well, at the core, to go deeper, what's the biggest sin we commit with guilt and shame? Is A, guilt, we believe that we can't love other people because it doesn't feel safe, or they've used guilt as a weapon, or I've done something that I can't be loved for, so I don't feel that I can love them in some way. And or B, shame lets us know we've stopped loving ourselves. If we can't love ourselves, then how does that play out in all these other areas of our life? Now we have to hide and protect, and again, bury all these emotions, experiences in my unconscious. So we see how all these situations cascade over time, and it becomes more and more complex. So beyond that, what memories come to mind? We talked about that. How many thoughts and attitudes and emotions am I aware of? And often the question I'll ask people when you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off, how many simultaneous thoughts, beliefs, memories do you have? That again, in that time, you have maybe 9 or 10 different thoughts, experiences, beliefs, but you can only act on one at a time. And that one at a time is going to depend on the signals and the triggers of the outside world of what's happening in the present, as well as even, like I said, appraisals of the future. So if I'm going to cut somebody off back, I'm going to be looking around. Is there a cop around, or might this person run me off the road back, or am I going to get into this road rage situation? These are all the situations that people are making instantaneous evaluations of that they don't even realize are happening because they happen so quickly between our conscious and unconscious, and even then breaking down our defenses and breaking through our defenses, or our defenses coming up even more. And again, these are the variables in the emotional algebra that we want to seek to really understand more fully.
So Dr. A, how are you applying this in the office? How are you working this through with patients that you work with?
Well, again, I see this all since I see it as energy, and I see these as basically fragmented parts of ourselves. Again, the idea of going to physics again and saying, once we fragment that energy, it's not forever. People often believe when they come in that they're broken. I'm broken. I can't be fixed. This is a forever me. All these things happen. And I say, yes, they happened in your life, and they can either happen for you or to you. It's about your perception. If you can take these experiences that you call bad and or wrong and or weak, and you can understand their purpose and their value. And it doesn't mean that it's okay that horrific things happen or things that you feel that were traumatic happen to you. It's what you do with it now. That now we can help you find the tools to understand that. So what I want to do with people literally is help them I do a lot of hypnotic work and getting into the unconscious and help them understand where they saw that experience from that time and place, and where they're seeing it now, and help them now to become a resource or supporter, whether it's like a big brother or sister or a parent or a mom or dad, whatever we can see to help that part of them stuck in time, to see that now they have the ability and resources to work through that. And what do I want them to do is learn to love and accept and embrace every part of themselves. What happened to them and what people might have done that affected that person, like I said, could have been horrific experiences. It doesn't mean that person is worth love any less than anyone else. So as we're doing this, what are we doing? We're decreasing we're removing the barriers that we've put around these experiences. We're reclaiming that power. And through insight and growth and understanding, they're learning and they're seeing, oh, wait, I can do this differently. I can evolve and heal. And that's where I've had people who have a lot of really miraculous things happen in the office through things we do that are there are medical implications, there are emotional implications, there are implications for addictions that happen through doing this work. And it takes time. It is a lot of work, because you think by the time they're getting into my office, how many thousands and thousands of experiences have they had that have resulted in basically a reason why I need this belief system. And often belief systems are competing with each other. It's as much a contentious world inside of ourselves as it is on the outside world. And to me, that's another reason why we have so much contention these days, because we really don't know how to resolve these things. And to me, for a number of people who are on medications, I think that they could learn to get through things without it. And I've had plenty of people who have been able to work off their medications over time. Now, I'm not saying everybody can go without medication. I do know that some people, for different reasons, they really do better on medication, and that's okay. So it's not a sign of success or failure. It's a sign of taking what life is giving us and doing the most with it. Because to me, this is emotion school. This is a place where we're here to learn, to understand love and pain and fear and hurt and betrayal and all those emotions, to see how they can help us grow closer together rather than split us apart. So we've just brought it back around to equity again.
Yeah. And Dr. E, you brought up medication a couple of times now. What types of medications are you talking about that people are on?
There's, between antidepressants, anxiolytics, even, to me, for some people with issues with attention and concentration, with ADD issues. Now, I definitely seen, and I know from my own personal experience, I don't know, I was ADD till I was 28. However, I looked at ADD as a positive thing. To me, I wouldn't have been able to do all the things I did in my life probably without my gift of ADD. And it also interfered with other areas of my life, sometimes with impulse control, with learning things in more traditional ways. But, I was an all-star soccer goalie. I had a jazz scholarship to Berklee College of Music out of high school. I owned a decking company through college. I've written 2 books. I was, first done with my dissertation, a master's, and, things like that in grad school, or one of the first ones done with that. And it drove me in some ways. It pushed me to be perfectionistic, which became a liability in time. And yes, it also, those times that it distracted me. So for a while, when I figured that out and I went on the meds, I was like, oh my gosh, somebody turned the noise off in my head, And then I learned behaviorally, I said, I want to learn behaviorally how I can manage this. So yeah, I haven't been on the stimulants for 30 years now, but through that time of learning, and realizing how I learn. So learning how I learning how to organize structure, learning how to set up plans, behavioral plans for me that help me to be consistent. So I often say inconsistency is still consistency. It's just inconsistent consistency. Lack of structure is still structure. It's just disorganized structure. So it's how we look at building consistency and structure in healthier ways in our lives. And that's just one example. And I kind of digress there. But the issue is seeing how can I take what life has brought me and use it as a tool rather than see it as a weapon and as my opponent or as my own persecutor. So many times we built those victim, persecutor, rescuer models inside of our unconscious that affect our attitudes and beliefs and behaviors that will affect, well, this medication is my rescuer. This medication fixes things. So again, it's not to say that nobody should need medication, because I know there are neurochemical discrepancies and issues that can be genetically based and can be caused by other issues that medications definitely help. It's doing maybe some research and finding some good therapy to help people figure out, okay, how can I work through this to either minimize and or eliminate the medication I'm taking.
And another counterintuitive idea there, Dr. E, referring to your ADHD as a gift rather than some people see it as a huge problem, right?
Yeah, it's all about perception. I used to teach 3-day workshops when I first started about, about how ADD is seen as opportunities, creates opportunities versus obstacles. Like I said, I have learned to do a lot of things and am able to do a lot of things. I know how to scuba dive and skydive, and I build all kinds of stuff because I enjoy living life to the full. I enjoy learning and also moderate the risk on that, so I'm also able to look at it from a logical standpoint to mitigate serious risk in the things that I learn. So I make sure I do them in safe ways, whereas that's where I've learned from impulse controlling, diving into things sometimes that I shouldn't. So life is here to teach me, not to crush me, not to control me. And yes, some people have different challenges than others, grossly different challenges than others. And I think that's how we can also learn gratitude and learn how to give a hand up to people, not just a handout as we grow through life. And that's really what I try to do with what I'm doing and anything I do, is how can I help people to grow from maybe my experiences I had and make medicine from suffering, as they say in the Zen faith.
Yeah. And getting back to your graphic, I was wondering as well, different people have different defense mechanisms or different, you were talking a lot about energy, maybe have different energy for defense, right? To devote to defense. Not everyone has the same energy levels or maybe
Exactly.
deploys their energy in the same way. What can
again,
people...
you're going back to those primary dichotomies. Do they want to look good? Do they want to look strong? Do they want to look right? And then you're looking at their resources, their internal resources. How much energy do they have to put towards their own cognitive or emotional defenses? So often people who don't have those cognitive resources will go more towards emotional defenses. Sometimes people who want to be seen as good, they won't protect themselves because they feel that's bad. It's wrong. So they just continue to push those emotions down, even though they're in there, because, some of the rules that I have in general are that everybody experiences all the same emotions. It's what we do with them that makes us different. And while understanding emotions can be simple, understanding how people use them can be very complex, whether it's ourself or another person. And that's why even with kids and parents, there's often a mismatch in temperament in the way that child comes to the world and the primary dichotomies that they might use that often will result in these conflicts that happen between kids and parents and issues like that. So I think that's the important piece to understand is, yes, there's so much of this where now you're seeing how complex this can get and why this podcast we're doing, Andrew, it can go on for eons of time because there's so many different issues to discuss and so many different ways to look at these variables that go on within us all. Indeed,
there are. And so big takeaways from this episode, Dr. E, obviously building a lot on what we covered in the last episode with the various emotions, the strong and weak emotions. But here we go. And just to put the graphic up here one more time again, I mean, you can see the unconscious, the conscious, and all the experiences, many of which people are forgetting and maybe only learning about through therapy, or maybe through, I guess you need to have a therapist be present to bring back some of these emotions, to understand why you're behaving the way you are. Or can people do it through like any sort of self-reflection?
I think both. I think definitely helps to have some therapy, that person who can really help that person through those issues and look at them. And also I think just through introspection, so I think there's a lot of things that we can look at that can help us to remember, and just taking the time to be more mindful, taking the time to look within, like I said, ask those questions. What age do I feel? What emotions am I aware of? How, do I feel overwhelmed? Do I feel failure? Do I feel stupid? So looking at those singular emotions and then the combination of emotions. What I say is when anger, protective emotions come, I say they never come first and they never come alone. So that's anger, rage, arrogance, flippancy, defiance, sarcasm, and hatred. They never, ever, ever come first. They're always a reaction and or a response to a perceived event that resulted in a feeling of weakness, vulnerability, pain, fear. emotions that that are going to be in those realms or in that spectrum. And regardless of what happens, the resolution is learning to love every part of us, to learn to love that those emotions are there and saying, you know what, I sent you away a long time ago. It's time that we build a better relationship. And again, these are things and how we do that. I'll probably discuss in other podcasts as well.
Got it. So a lot of science that we talked about today too, Dr. E. Feeling like a teacher here. Any homework for listeners and viewers to do before the next episode?
Just remember those. What age do I feel? How many different emotions, memories, experiences came up through this process? And then from there, what do you do with that? And how do I start to understand that? How can I start to form a more positive relationship with those experiences rather than hide from it and avoid it? And again, remember our complexity. We all have a lot of complexity within ourselves, and that is the journey. Life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And as we can really understand ourselves better, we can move from feeling like the patient to become the doctor as we make medicine from our suffering and use it to help heal others.
Fascinating stuff, Dr. E. A lot to consider today. Hope people really can take a lot away from this today.
Right.
Great stuff.
Absolutely.
Tune in next time on Emotional Algebra with Dr. E.
Until next time.